It happened at the Wexford Line, West Germany, autumn 1986. I was 22, attached to the scout platoon of our battalion. We were part of a field exercise meant to test how fast we could screen and react along a border map trace. None of it was supposed to be real. That night it became real enough to change every name on our roster. I tell this now because the reports that followed erased what started it. We were detained, not for what we did, but for what we found. 4 crates, 1 cooler, 1 sealed case. The cooler was the reason. I only touched it once, wearing field gloves, but I still remember the weight. Lighter than it should have been. Cold without frost. They said we breached a classified site. We were inside our own perimeter. They said we held restricted material. It was on our map already. That's where it began, at the Wexford Line. Before we start the video, hit the subscribe button to support the channel. It only takes a second. We were stationed at Wildflecken Training Area, near the Hessian Hills. The base sat in a fold of land that kept the signal weak and the wind steady. Our unit had been rotating through field exercises for months. Operation Sabre Reach was meant to simulate a forward defense in case of a Warsaw Pact breach across the Fulda Gap. Every battalion got a segment of the map marked by phase lines. Ours was the Wexford Line. The map showed it as a thin red trace running through a strip of forest and farm fields. To us, it was only a name for a line we were supposed to hold. Nothing unusual about it. The line had been reused across different rotations. No one remembered why it carried an Irish name. I was a specialist in the scout platoon, attached to the Battalion Tactical Operations Center. Our mission was simple: report on gaps and control road checkpoints during the simulation. I drove a stripped-down Jeep and carried a field radio, grid notebook, and spare canteens. We slept inside the vehicles when we could. 2 days before the event at Wexford Line, our operations sergeant briefed us. We were to maintain 3 control points along the road leading into the training zone. Each point would have a pair of MPS and 1 scout observer. My team drew checkpoint 2, the midsection closest to the line. The hours were long but steady. Trucks moved in and out carrying supplies, blank ammunition, and marking gear. Most vehicles were tagged with exercise numbers on white cards. At night, we used small chemical lights to signal. It felt routine, almost dull. The first hint that something was different came from the logistics officer's radio call. He asked us to be ready to verify any vehicles without a convoy tag. He said a classified observer unit would be passing through and we were to log its plate, but not inspect. The phrasing caught my attention. We'd seen observer controllers before, but they always carried visible credentials and bright orange armbands. None were ever called classified. Late that night, I noted the first sensory mark that stayed with me. Inside the command tent, a small inverter kept a faint electric buzz under the hum of conversation. It was constant and thin, like a wire singing under tension. Every few seconds, it would drop out, then return. No one else mentioned it. I started tapping my boot each time it faded, counting intervals. 4, then 5, then 6. The next morning, we were told to rotate, rest, and eat at the field kitchen before noon. The sky was flat and gray. The mud was ankle-deep near the supply trucks. I cleaned my rifle, checked the tires, and marked distances on the grid sheet. 12 kilometers from the battalion CP to our point. 6 from our point to Wexford Line. Those numbers would return later. By midday, command reported an unmarked vehicle moving through the exercise zone. It had cleared the southern checkpoint but skipped the log entry. We were told to prepare to stop and verify. We assumed it was a lost convoy or an observer from another brigade. Still, we lined the cones, checked our sidearms, and kept the radio tuned. An hour later, we saw the vehicle, a dark blue van, civilian model, no markings. It slowed as it reached the cones but didn't stop until we signaled twice. The driver wore fatigues without patches. He looked calm, said he was with logistics support for the observer team. No armband, no convoy tag. We logged the plate, but it didn't match the list. Our platoon leader instructed us to hold position and wait for confirmation. The driver stayed quiet inside the van. I walked once around it and saw a set of small labels near the rear doors. Faded but legible. USAREUR, Restricted Material Transport. That didn't fit any exercise category. When I returned to the Jeep, the electric buzz came faintly from our radio. Not static, more like an interference tone. I tapped the dial, but it stayed. The air smelled faintly of bleach and metal, like the maintenance tent. I noted it but didn't say anything. The radio order came 10 minutes later. Maintain custody of the vehicle and await an officer from Brigade HQ. That meant this was above our level. The driver didn't resist. He handed over his ID, a temporary pass with blurred ink. The issuing office code was unreadable. We parked the van off the main track and kept watch. The driver sat inside, not restrained, but quiet. I started a log sheet, marking time in 5-minute intervals. 4 entries, then 5, then 6. The same counting habit again. When the officer convoy arrived, we expected a quick inspection. Instead, we were told to stand aside. 3 men in clean uniforms, no name tapes, stepped out. One took our log, another checked the van. They spoke quietly, all business. After a short exchange, the senior officer said the van would be moved to brigade maintenance for verification. We were told to accompany it for security. That made us uneasy. We didn't know what we were escorting, only that it carried something labeled restricted. We drove slowly behind the van toward the Wexford Line, following the narrow dirt track that led toward the maintenance bay inside the exercise perimeter. The buzz in my radio stayed constant. The bleach smell followed inside the Jeep. It felt like we were entering a zone inside the zone, somewhere not listed on the exercise map. The track to the maintenance bay cut through a stand of pine. The soil was soft, and our Jeep slid often. The blue van stayed steady, never above 20 kilometers an hour. We passed the field boundary sign marked Wexford Line. To the exercise, it was only a reference. To me, it started to feel like a border. The maintenance bay was an open-sided structure made from aluminum panels and canvas tarps. It had 2 floodlights, a generator, and a line of oil drums. We parked outside while the 3 men from brigade talked to the maintenance chief. They used quiet voices, but the chief looked unsettled. He kept glancing at the van. One of the men asked for a clear work area and ordered everyone except 2 mechanics to leave. Our team was told to stay for inner perimeter watch. The term was unusual for a routine inspection. We set up a small cordon using barrier tape and marked the edges with cones. The mechanic drove the van under the bay roof. Inside the bay, the electric buzz came louder through the lights. Not radio interference now, but a hum from the fixtures. I stood 12 steps from the nearest pole and could feel the vibration in my boots. I started counting it again, 1 interval each second. The rhythm kept me alert. The bleach smell grew stronger. One mechanic was wiping tools with cleaning rags. He said the bay had been used for equipment decon earlier that week. The smell clung to the air like a film. They opened the rear doors of the van. I could only see part of the cargo from my position. 4 green crates, 1 white cooler, 1 gray metal case. Each had numbered seals. The officer in charge checked the seals against a clipboard. His hands shook slightly. When he turned, he met my eyes for a second. That was when I realized he wasn't part of any observer unit. His collar had no branch insignia, only plain subdued tabs. We were told to log the contents, but not to touch them. I wrote the list by number. 4 crates, 1 cooler, 1 case. I underlined the cooler twice. Half an hour later, an MP truck arrived. The sergeant in charge asked for a custody signature. The plainclothes officer hesitated, then signed only his initials. They moved the crates into the MP truck, but not the cooler. The cooler stayed on a metal table under the light. The officer said it needed to be stabilized before movement. I didn't know what that meant. We stood there another hour. The driver of the van remained in the corner, guarded but not handcuffed. His face was pale. He asked once for water. I handed him a canteen. His hands trembled. He never looked at the cooler. At 1900, a message came from brigade. Hold all personnel and equipment at maintenance until cleared by higher command. That was the first time I felt real concern. A field exercise rarely stopped like that. The generator coughed and the lights flickered. The buzz filled the pauses like static pressure. I counted again, from 1 to 12, then stopped when my head began to pound. One mechanic asked if he should cut the cooler seal for inspection. The officer told him no. Instead, he took out a small sensor wand and passed it over the lid. The wand beeped twice. He wrote something in a notebook. He looked toward us and said quietly, "You didn't see this, right?" We nodded because that's what soldiers do when they don't understand orders. The bleach smell deepened. Someone must have spilled cleaner on the floor. It mixed with the damp air and diesel fumes. It burned the back of my throat. When the MP truck left with the crates, only the cooler and the gray case stayed. The case was smaller, metal, with a strip of red tape marked biostorage. The tape was old and peeling. The officer ordered it placed beside the cooler. The driver spoke again, his first full sentence since arrival. He said, "You shouldn't move them together." The officer ignored him. We received orders to escort the remaining items to brigade headquarters once transport arrived. Until then, we were to maintain watch and record any change. Nothing changed except the noise. The buzz grew deeper, like two frequencies overlapping. I kept writing in my notebook, marking time every 10 minutes. By the end of the night, I had 8 pages. Each line matched a noise shift or a light flicker. I didn't know why I was doing it, only that it helped me stay steady. When the transport finally came, a covered utility truck with no markings, it was close to midnight. 2 men climbed out wearing protective gloves and masks. They spoke to the officer, then carried the cooler and case into the truck. No paperwork, no signatures. The van driver was taken too. He didn't resist. He looked relieved, almost grateful to leave. We were told to stay in the bay overnight, maintain security, and await further instructions. That order made little sense. Field security was not our job. Still, we followed it. At 0200, the generator shut down. The buzz died. The silence hit hard, like pressure lifting. The bleach smell lingered. I sat against the wall, looking at the empty space where the cooler had stood. The floor under it was damp. A thin mark ran across the metal table, like condensation. I touched it with my glove. Cold. When dawn came, our platoon leader arrived with an operations officer. They told us the van and its cargo had been reclassified under a secure incident protocol. We were ordered not to discuss it outside the chain of command. Then came the part that stayed with me. The operations officer said we would be detained for containment verification. No one explained what that meant. The electric buzz returned when the lights came back on. They moved us from the bay to a temporary holding tent beside brigade headquarters. The tent sat near a small generator shack, lined with fluorescent lights. The same thin electric buzz came from the bulbs. It never stopped. The air was still heavy with bleach. My uniform smelled of it. We were told this was administrative hold. No weapons, no phones, no field notes. They collected everything, including my small notebook. I kept one sheet folded inside my sleeve, the page where I'd written the sequence of times and noise intervals. I wanted to remember the pattern. A captain from operations entered the tent and gave us a short talk. He said what happened at the Wexford Line involved classified property belonging to a defense research group. The phrase he used was biological telemetry sample equipment. He didn't explain more. He said our unit had done its duty, but was now part of an internal review. His tone was polite, careful, practiced. After he left, one of the MPs guarding us whispered that the blue van had come from outside the training rotation. It had entered through a logistics gate with a temporary pass. That was not unusual, but the pass had no origin code. The paperwork trail stopped at a supply depot that didn't exist in the roster. The hours passed slowly. The buzz filled the gaps. I noted each flicker, but stopped counting after a while. The rhythm had already settled inside my head. By noon, medical staff arrived and ordered basic checks. Blood pressure, eyes, hands, throat. They used latex gloves and plastic swabs. No one said why. One medic asked if I'd handled anything without gloves. I said no, except for the canteen I'd given the driver. She noted that on a chart and left. Outside, I saw 2 vehicles parked in front of the command trailer. Both were plain vans, no military plates. Men in clean uniforms moved between them carrying sealed containers. I counted 4. One looked identical to the white cooler. I tried to follow the chain of movement, but we were told to remain seated. The guards kept a polite distance, not hostile, but firm. Each wore a simple badge on their right shoulder, dark blue with no text. Later that afternoon, they called for me and another soldier, Corporal Rivera, to assist with a site inspection. We thought it meant the maintenance bay again. Instead, they drove us to a fenced area behind the command post where several vehicles sat under tarps. The officer who met us there introduced himself only as liaison. He handed us gloves and masks, said we would help inventory items for transfer. We lifted tarps, checked tags, and matched numbers. Most were regular field containers. Then we found one with a mark I recognized, red tape reading biostorage, the same mark as the gray case. The officer told us not to touch it. He placed a radiation badge on his sleeve, then leaned close and looked through the crate vent. After a few seconds, he closed it and wrote on a clipboard. I asked if the items were part of the exercise. He said, "They are now." The bleach smell hit again, sharp and sudden. Someone had sprayed disinfectant on the gravel. It clung to our boots. As we loaded the other crates, I saw a tag partially peeled off one of them. The visible text read, "Fort Detrick transfer pending." That was not a European facility. It was in Maryland. I'd only heard of it once in training when they talked about biological defense. That night, I couldn't sleep. The buzz came through the tent fabric, even with the generator far away. My thoughts kept circling the same loop. 4 crates, 1 cooler, 1 case. The numbers kept repeating. I wrote them again on a scrap of paper, then crossed them out. Early the next morning, 2 officers entered the tent. They told us that official investigators would debrief everyone who had been near the maintenance bay. They divided us into groups of 3. Each group waited outside a trailer before being called in. When my turn came, the trailer lights hit me in the eyes. The air was cold and dry. I smelled bleach again, stronger here than before. 2 men sat at a folding table. One wore a medical badge, the other plain uniform. They asked me to describe the contents of the van. I listed what I saw: 4 crates, 1 cooler, 1 case. The man in uniform nodded slowly each time I said a number. Then he asked if I heard anything unusual at the site. I said yes, the electric buzz. I described it. He made no expression. He just asked, "Did anyone else hear it?" I said I didn't know. The man with the medical badge asked about smell. I said bleach and metal. He underlined that twice on his sheet. When the interview ended, they returned my gear but not my notebook. They said it would be kept for records. Back outside, Rivera said his interview had been nearly the same, except they'd asked him about light conditions, whether any change in brightness occurred. He said yes, the lights had flickered. He told me they seemed pleased by that answer. We were released to a temporary barracks near the airfield, away from the rest of the unit. No one explained why. We were not under arrest, but our names were now part of a restricted list. The rest of the battalion continued the exercise without us. Officially, nothing had happened at the Wexford Line. The map stayed unchanged. That night, as we tried to rest, the lights in the barracks buzzed louder than before. The same pitch, the same rhythm. I counted 12 cycles before it cut out. The silence afterward felt wrong, like something missing that should have stayed. I thought about the van driver and his one sentence: "You shouldn't move them together." The next day proved he was right. By the 3rd day, the situation had shifted from confusion to quiet control. Orders came from higher command to maintain normal training schedules, but none of us from the Wexford Line were reassigned. We were on administrative standby. It meant waiting without a clear reason. Every morning, a staff sergeant from brigade came by to check names. He was polite but alert. He always asked the same question: "Any unusual symptoms?" None of us had any. Still, he made notes on a clipboard with color-coded sheets. I started to notice something strange with sound again. The buzz from the ceiling lights had changed tone. It pulsed like breathing. It wasn't loud, just present enough to fill the gaps between voices. I caught myself timing it again. 4 seconds on, 4 seconds off, then 5, then 6. I didn't tell anyone. That afternoon, a truck rolled into the airfield compound carrying the same 3 men we had seen at the maintenance bay. They wore fresh uniforms and carried sealed folders. They met privately with the brigade commander. Afterward, the commander called an all-hands formation. He said the material we had intercepted was part of a cross-command test and that our cooperation was appreciated. He didn't mention the van, the driver, or our detention. When the formation broke, one of the MPS who had guarded us pulled me aside. He said quietly that the van had been found abandoned at a decon point north of the line. No driver, no cargo, no plates. The report said the location was sterilized and sealed. I asked who filed the report. He said it came from outside command authority. He didn't explain. That night, new guards appeared at the barracks. They were not from our unit. Their patches were blank. They didn't talk to us, only stood near the doors. The smell of bleach returned, faint but steady. I followed it to the end of the hall, where a small cleaning cart sat against the wall. On top was a bottle labeled Decon Mix Level 2. The cap was off. The liquid had soaked into the floor. Sleep was hard. The buzz came and went. I dreamed of counting crates in the dark. 4, then 5, then 6. Always missing one. The next morning we were taken back to the Wexford Line area. They said it was for environmental assessment. I rode in the back of a deuce and a half with Rivera and 2 engineers. The road was muddy but dry in patches. The track marks from the van were still there, though partly filled with rain. When we arrived at the bay, the area looked changed. The structure had been cleared out. The metal table where the cooler had stood was gone. The ground showed a clean rectangle, lighter than the rest, as if scrubbed. The air was sharp with bleach again. The engineers set up sensors and took soil samples. One of them used a handheld meter that clicked softly. I asked what it measured. He said surface potential. I didn't know what that meant. He said it was used to check grounding issues from generators. We spent most of the day there. I walked the perimeter, counting steps out of habit. 12 from the first cone to the corner of the tarp, 12 again to the second. The pattern stayed perfect until the last stretch, where my count hit 13. I started again, but it kept ending uneven. Near dusk, a plane truck arrived carrying 2 large containers. They unloaded them inside the bay without speaking. Both had the same markings: research property, secure transport. The officers on site didn't open them. They simply locked the bay and placed 2 sentries outside. On the way back, Rivera said he'd noticed something. The ground where the containers sat was cooler than the rest, even though the sun had hit it all day. He said when he knelt there, the air felt dry and metallic. I believed him. I had felt that same cold through my gloves when I touched the table days earlier. We reported back to the temporary barracks. The guards were still there. Our names were still on the restricted list. Every meal came in sealed trays marked by number. At night, the buzz returned stronger. I woke around 0300 and saw the ceiling light pulsing in short bursts. I counted 4, 5, 6, 7. Then darkness. The sound stopped. When it returned, it carried a faint tremor, like a low note too deep to hear properly. My pulse matched it without meaning to. The next day, we were summoned for a second debrief. This one was shorter. Only one officer spoke. He thanked us for our cooperation and said our incident report would be sealed. He said the matter involved higher authorities and that we were to treat it as a training security breach. Nothing more. We were told to destroy any personal notes. When he left the room, I noticed something small. His left cuff was stained with a faint white residue like dried cleaner. The smell confirmed it. They returned our weapons the next morning. That should have been the end, but it wasn't. A rumor spread through the battalion that one of the engineers who'd gone back to the Wexford Line had collapsed during decon. The medics called it heat exhaustion. It was October. By the end of that week, the line was closed off entirely. No training traffic, no convoys. The map sheet still listed it as a phase line, but the control points were removed. When I asked our platoon leader what that meant, he said it was reclassified terrain. I wrote down that phrase. I didn't know it would be the last thing I'd record in my notes for months. The next message we received was simple. All personnel involved were to remain on base until further review. That night, the buzz came again, louder than ever, and the lights flickered in rhythm with my heartbeat. I counted 12 bursts before everything went silent. When it ended, the air smelled clean again. Too clean, like the bleach had soaked into the world itself. That silence marked the start of what came next. 2 days later, they moved us again, this time to a warehouse on the far side of the airfield. It looked normal from outside, but inside the space was divided by plastic sheets and temporary walls. The lights hummed louder here. The buzz filled everything, a steady high note that pressed on the ears. We were told it was a containment review site. No insignia marked the doors, only printed numbers. I was assigned to room 4. Rivera went to room 5. The rest of our section stayed in separate areas. We were told to sit and wait for questioning. I counted my steps inside the room, 12 to the far wall, 12 back. The smell of bleach was thick enough to sting. Every corner of the room shone faintly white. The floor tiles were damp. After an hour, a man in civilian clothes came in with 2 others. He introduced himself as part of a defense research liaison group. He said they were here to clarify the sequence of custody. His tone was calm, practiced. He spoke like someone used to giving briefings, not interrogations. He asked about the van, the driver, in the items we saw. I gave simple answers. 4 crates, 1 cooler, 1 case. He nodded each time, then asked if I had noticed any light distortion. The question seemed out of place. I said the lights had flickered. He wrote that down. Then he asked something new. Did you hear any tone or interference that felt different from normal equipment? I hesitated, then said yes. The thin electric buzz. He didn't look surprised. He just asked how long it lasted. I said it came and went but never stopped completely. He leaned forward. Was it still present after the cooler was removed? I said yes. He exchanged a look with one of the other men. Then he thanked me and left without another word. After they were gone, I noticed a new sound from behind the wall. Short bursts like a high-frequency test. It came in patterns: 4 pulses, pause, 4 again. I started counting without meaning to. Later that evening, they brought Rivera into my room. His face was pale. He said they'd shown him photographs of the crates. One photo showed a label with a code. He remembered it, DRELX4. He said it looked real, not an exercise marking. When he asked what it meant, they said it was unrelated to field activity. We both knew that was a lie. The following morning, a technical team entered the warehouse. They wheeled in a metal cabinet marked sensor logs. One technician connected cables to the ceiling lights. The buzz stopped for a few seconds, then came back stronger. The man in charge said it was voltage harmonics. I watched his hands while he worked. He wore double gloves, both taped at the wrists. Each time he moved, a faint metallic smell rose from the equipment. When they left, a new instruction came through. All of us were to remain under monitoring for 72 hours. The reason given was possible cross-field contamination. That phrase stayed in my head. Not contamination from the air or soil. Cross-field. Something that traveled between areas, not through direct contact. That night, the lights dimmed again. The buzz changed pitch. Rivera said he could feel it under his ribs, like a low tremor. I could too. It wasn't sound anymore. More like vibration in the air itself. Then the smell of bleach returned, sharper than before, cutting through everything. I covered my mouth with my sleeve. My eyes watered. The door opened and a soldier in full protective gear stepped in. He said the area was being cleared for relocation. They didn't tell us where we were going. We followed the noise. They loaded us into a covered transport, 6 of us total. The back of the truck smelled of bleach and oil. The canvas sides flapped with every turn. No one spoke. The electric buzz wasn't in the air now, but I could feel it in my teeth. A faint vibration that came and went as the truck bounced along the road. We drove for about an hour before stopping. When the doors opened, bright light hit my eyes. We were inside a hangar, larger than anything I had seen on base. The space was divided by partitions made of clear panels. People in full protective suits moved between them. A decon team sprayed the floor as we stepped out. The liquid steamed slightly where it touched the concrete. A major met us at the entry checkpoint. He said this was a containment verification site. We were told again that our presence was routine. Nothing felt routine. Everything smelled like cleaner and rubber. They separated us into pairs. Rivera stayed with me. We were escorted into a side room containing a single metal table, 2 folding chairs, and a portable air unit. On the table sat a gray case that looked almost identical to the one from the van. The red tape had been peeled away, leaving a faint outline. The major told us we would assist with a visual confirmation only, no physical contact. He said the item had been logged incorrectly and needed identification by witnesses. I felt the weight of that word, witness. He opened the case slowly. Inside were 2 small vials packed in foam. Each held a clear liquid with a faint blue tint. The labels had faded, but I could still read one phrase. Field sample, phase line Wexford. The second vial had no label at all. The major closed the lid, sealed it with new tape, and marked the tag with a new code, BRT17. He looked at me and asked if this matched what we had seen earlier. I said the case looked the same, but I couldn't be sure about the contents. He nodded, wrote something in his log, and left the room. For a few seconds, we sat in silence. The air unit hummed. Rivera whispered that he'd seen one of the technicians outside drop a small sensor pad into a disposal bin. It was glowing faintly red. I asked him if he thought we were exposed to something. He didn't answer. An hour later, the lights in the hangar flickered. The buzz came back, faint but familiar, just above hearing. Everyone froze for a moment. Then the emergency lights kicked in, and the main power stabilized. The major ordered all non-essential personnel out of the area. We were left in the side room with one guard. I looked again at the gray case. The new tag number, BRT-17, was written in a different hand than the rest. I counted the strokes of the marker out of habit, 4 downward, 1 across. The guard told us we would be transported back to base by evening. Before we left, a man in a dark coat entered the hangar. He wasn't in uniform. He spoke briefly with the major, then gestured toward us. They looked like they were deciding something. The man in the coat nodded, then turned away. We were moved back into the truck and driven to an administrative building near the main road. This time, there were no protective teams, just MPs at the gate. The buzz in the truck stopped when the engine did. The silence felt wrong again, like a pause between signals. Inside the building, a clerk handed us sealed envelopes containing new orders. They were stamped, "Transfer pending, do not disseminate." No destination listed. I opened mine anyway. It contained one sheet of paper, blank except for a number in the top corner. 12. That number followed me for years. The morning after we received those blank transfer orders, we were told to report to the old motor pool building on the west side of the base. It had been closed for months, but now it looked newly cleaned. The smell of bleach hit us the moment we stepped in. The floors glistened, and every surface had been scrubbed pale. The same officer from the hangar was waiting inside, the one who had shown us the gray case. He spoke quietly, his tone clipped. He said a follow-up verification was needed before any transfers could proceed. He called it a containment trace. None of us understood what that meant. We were lined up in small groups. One technician came down the line with a handheld device that clicked softly. He scanned our hands, boots, and collars. When he reached me, the device made a steady tone, not a beep. He paused, then looked at the officer. The officer nodded once, and the technician wrote something in his log. They moved me to the side and told Rivera to wait. 2 MPs stood near the door, calm but focused. I felt my pulse climb. The hum from the ceiling lights had returned, faint but sharp. The same electric buzz, steady and high. They led me into a side room that looked like an improvised lab. A single table, bright light overhead, air filters on the wall. The buzz came from the light itself. It had the same pitch as before, the one from the maintenance bay. The technician handed me a small metal tag and told me to hold it between my fingers. He said it was a baseline control. He pressed a button on his device, and a narrow beam of green light passed over the tag. The tone rose, then leveled. He said nothing, just noted the reading. After a few minutes, the officer entered. He told me directly, "The material you encountered at Wexford Line contained biological telemetry components. Some of those may emit signals under certain conditions." His words were careful, chosen. "We need to determine whether you are carrying any trace interference." I asked if it was dangerous. He said, "We don't use that word." They dimmed the light and told me to close my eyes. The buzz stayed, low and constant. I could feel it in my jaw. It wasn't sound anymore, more like pressure. When I opened my eyes, the room looked brighter, though nothing had changed. The officer asked if I felt anything unusual. I said no. He told me to count backward from 12. I did. When I reached 4, the buzz stopped. For a moment, the silence felt heavier than the sound. They ended the test and told me to wait outside. Rivera was already there, pale and sweating. He said his scan had made the same tone. Both of us were told to remain on standby. By late afternoon, new orders came through. We were to report to the holding bay again, this time under escort. The truck ride was quiet. No one explained why we were being moved again. When we arrived, the bay looked different. The lights were brighter, the air cleaner. At the center of the floor stood a single metal crate, smaller than before. A group of officers and technicians surrounded it. The major who had supervised the hangar scene was among them. He pointed to the crate and said, "This is the material recovered from your checkpoint. It has been stabilized." His voice carried across the space, flat and sure. "We are transferring it under controlled observation. You will confirm its condition and sign the record." We stepped closer. The crate bore a new label, white with black print. The code read, Unit 12, Retained Sample. My chest tightened when I saw the number, the same one printed on the blank order sheet. They opened the crate carefully. Inside was the white cooler, now sealed in plastic. The gray case was gone. A small device sat on top, a black recorder with a red light. The same model I'd seen in the van days earlier. The red light pulsed in rhythm. 4 flashes, pause, 4 again. The major asked if this matched what we'd seen at the checkpoint. I nodded. Rivera did too. The major wrote something, then said, "That will complete your role in this operation." He didn't dismiss us right away. He watched the recorder. When the red light flickered irregularly, his expression changed. He ordered the technician to unplug the unit. The moment it powered down, the ceiling lights dimmed and the electric buzz cut off entirely. For 10 seconds, no one moved. Then the emergency lights came on, flooding the bay in orange glow. The technician swore under his breath. The major ordered everyone to stay still. The floor under the crate had begun to frost over, a thin film of condensation spreading outward. The temperature in the room dropped fast enough that I could see my breath. Someone shouted for containment gear. 2 men in protective suits ran in from the far door. They sprayed the floor around the crate with a chemical mist that smelled like bleach. The frost stopped spreading. The red light on the recorder blinked once, then died. The major told everyone to step back. He turned to the technician and said quietly, "That's enough for today." We were escorted out. The MPs looked tense but calm. Outside, the sun was low, the air still. I could hear the generator running behind the building. The same electric hum, steady again, faint but there. It never really stopped, it just moved with us. We were told to remain near the motor pool overnight for observation. They gave us cots, blankets, and a small heater that barely worked. The light overhead stayed on all night, buzzing the same way as before. Rivera tried to sleep. I couldn't. Each time the hum rose, my mind replayed the sight of that frost spreading under the crate. At 0200, footsteps passed outside the door. 2 officers entered quietly. One carried a clipboard, the other a sidearm. They told us to stand. The officer with the clipboard said the sealed materials had been moved to an off-site depot. He said our debriefing was complete. He paused before adding, "You'll remain under internal review until further notice." It sounded like release, but his eyes didn't match his tone. The MPs escorted us to the administration building for processing. Inside, the air was colder than outside. The bleach smell returned stronger than ever. Every surface shone. I could see my reflection in the tile. The buzz was constant, a clean, unbroken tone. I counted 4 seconds between each flicker of the light. They took our statements again, almost word for word. I listed the same facts. 4 crates, 1 cooler, 1 case. The clerk typed without expression. When I finished, she asked if I'd noticed any visual changes. I said yes, the frost. She stopped typing for a moment, then said softly, "That will be noted." We signed non-disclosure papers. Standard wording. The last line read, "Personnel listed will remain restricted from field assignment pending clearance." I didn't realize then that pending would mean months. When we stepped outside, dawn had broken over the airfield. The base looked normal again. Trucks moved, soldiers ran drills, radios chattered. It all looked as if nothing had happened. Only the faint hum of power lines reminded me that something still carried over from the Wexford Line. By midday, Rivera started feeling dizzy. He said it felt like standing too close to a transformer. The medics checked him, said his vitals were normal, but they took blood samples anyway. They pulled me aside and asked if I felt the same. I said no, though my teeth still buzzed faintly when the lights flickered. That evening, an MP came to our barracks with sealed envelopes. Inside mine was a single-page memo stamped "Personnel Action Hold." The text was short. Subject cleared for routine duty, but not external deployment. No reason, no signature. Only the same printed number, 12. Later that night, I walked out toward the motor pool fence. The place was empty except for 1 generator still running near the far shed. The sound was higher now, almost pure. I stood listening, counting. 4, 5, 6. Pause. The pattern repeated. Behind it, faint as breath, came another rhythm. Shorter pulses, uneven, like a coded signal. I turned to leave and saw a light through the windows of the bay we'd stood in days earlier. It wasn't the normal work light, but a pale white glow near the floor, where the cooler had been. The MPs posted nearby didn't seem to notice. I stepped closer until one stopped me. He said the area was sealed for maintenance. I asked what kind of maintenance. He just shook his head. Before sunrise, the hum stopped. Every light on base flickered once, then held steady. The next day, new officers arrived from higher command. They spoke with brigade staff behind closed doors. When they left, the motor pool was marked with yellow tape and warning signs. Authorized personnel only. We were told the incident was over. Reports finalized. Chain of custody complete. That should have ended it. But 2 weeks later, our platoon received a quiet briefing. A safety bulletin warned against prolonged proximity to testing equipment located within restricted perimeter zones. It listed 3 map grids. One of them overlapped the Wexford Line. The document didn't name our unit. It didn't mention the van or the cooler. But the instructions were clear: avoid all unlisted signals and report any unmarked power noise. The bulletin called it Field Resonance Awareness. I folded that bulletin and kept it. By the end of that month, Rivera was gone. Transferred to a medical facility in Landstuhl for evaluation, I asked around. No one had seen him leave. His cot was stripped clean, his nameplate removed. The buzz returned that night, faint from the far side of the base, where the power cables crossed. I counted the rhythm again. 4 pulses, pause, 4 more. I realized 12 wasn't a code. It was the count of those who had stood within 12 steps of the cooler. The Wexford Line stayed off limits after that. Training routes shifted, maps updated. On paper, it vanished like it had never existed. But some nights, when the wind moved through the trees the right way, I could hear that same electric hum roll across the distance. It wasn't a sound anymore. It was memory vibrating through metal, carried by current. That was the last night I ever stood near the line. After the incident, our battalion rotated back to garrison near Schweinfurt. The base looked the same, but everything felt slower, like people were waiting for instructions that never came. None of us spoke about Wexford Line, not by order, but by instinct. Within a week, command announced an internal review. They called it a material custody assessment. It sounded routine, but everyone knew it was about the van. The officers avoided questions. The report dates were always pending. I returned to my normal duties, but my focus was gone. The buzz wasn't in the lights anymore. It was in my head, faint, like memory replaying itself. At night, I'd wake with that same rhythm in my ears. 4 pulses, pause, 4 more. I started to notice the smell again too. Bleach mixed with cold metal. It appeared in places it shouldn't have, like the mess hall or the motor pool. Some nights I thought it followed me home on my gear. I washed everything twice, but it stayed. The days blurred together. Rivera was still at Landstuhl, no updates. One of the medics who had been with us during containment asked me if I'd heard from him. When I said no, she nodded, like that was what she expected. A few weeks later, she called me to medical for a follow-up exam. She said it was part of routine exposure tracking. They drew blood again. The form they gave me to sign listed my case under Transmission Review Incident 12. The number showed up everywhere. After that, the tone of the base changed. 2 officers from division headquarters arrived and started interviewing our command staff. They were polite, always calm, but everyone tensed up when they walked into a room. The next morning, all files related to Wexford Line were moved to a locked cabinet in the operations office. No one saw them again. I was ordered to attend a final debrief with a civilian official. He said he was from a defense liaison office. He asked short, controlled questions. He wanted exact times, distances, and phrases. I gave him what I remembered: 4 crates, 1 cooler, 1 case. The cooler weighed less than it should have. The driver warned not to move them together. The man wrote fast, filling several pages. When I finished, he looked up and said, "You understand this incident remains under classification indefinitely." I nodded. He smiled faintly, closed his folder, and said, "Good. That keeps everyone safe." He didn't say from what. A month passed, then another. The battalion resumed full operations. We trained, deployed for drills, and prepared for winter readiness. Everything looked normal, but a quiet tension sat over the unit. Orders arrived later than usual. Equipment checks took longer. The Wexford sector never appeared on the new maps. One night in November, a logistics convoy returned from a border exercise. One of the drivers said they had passed a restricted checkpoint guarded by American personnel with blank patches. He said the area was sealed off with warning lights. The grid he mentioned matched the old Wexford Line. No one logged it. By early December, I was reassigned to headquarters duty. My file listed me as temporarily limited, though no medical reason was given. When I asked, the clerk said it came from higher up. He couldn't change it. I spent that winter processing reports from field units, most of them routine, until one caught my attention. It was from a communications platoon working in our old sector. The report mentioned intermittent signal distortion near a repeater tower. The interference pattern was listed as cyclic 4x4. I read that line 3 times. I sent a message to the technician who filed it. He replied the same day. Signal ceased after power reroute. No cause found. That was it. No follow-up. No request for maintenance. The line was quiet again. The weeks passed in silence. Rivera never returned. His gear was shipped home with a short note. Medical reassignment. Condition stable. No one ever confirmed if that was true. One afternoon, I went to the operations room to file end-of-month summaries. The same cabinet that had held the Wexford files was gone. The wall behind it had been repainted. The officer on duty saw me staring and said quietly, "Don't think about it. It's done." But it wasn't, because that night the hum returned in the barracks wiring. Same pitch, same rhythm. 4, pause, 4. And under that faint electric tone, I could smell bleach again. Weeks later, the incident faded from official talk. New rotations came. New officers replaced the old ones, and our unit was marked as fully operational again. On paper, the Wexford Line had never existed, but inside the ranks it stayed alive in small ways. A glance when lights flickered, a pause when a generator tone changed pitch. Everyone who had been there knew, even if no one spoke it aloud. I got my release from limited duty that February. The medical form read, "No residual effects." I didn't feel sick, but sometimes my vision blurred when fluorescent lights buzzed. The sound always came in the same rhythm, 4, pause, 4. It never left completely. A few nights before my transfer, I walked to the far edge of the base, where the fence overlooked the old sector. The snow covered everything, smooth and silent. Beyond the tree line, the air seemed to hum faintly. I could almost taste the same bleach metal smell drifting through the cold. I stood there until the sound stopped. The next morning, our platoon sergeant gathered us for final brief. He said the review boards had closed all pending reports. The phrase he used was "containment concluded." He handed each of us a new duty roster. None of our names appeared on the same line again. When I packed my gear, I found a small envelope tucked in my field notebook. No name, just the number 12 written in pencil. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, an unsigned report summary. It listed one entry only: recovered materials relocated to undisclosed facility. Subject stable. I burned it that night behind the barracks. The paper turned to ash fast, but the number stayed visible longer than it should have. That same night, the base power flickered once. The hum returned for a moment, then faded. The next morning, command reported a short circuit at an old generator. They said it was routine wear. I didn't believe it. When I left Germany 2 months later, my transfer file was thinner than it should have been. Pages were missing, signatures replaced with initials. At the airport, I thought I could hear the same faint buzz under the terminal lights. It might have been nothing, but the pattern was exact. 4 pulses, pause, 4 more. That was the last trace of the Wexford Line I ever heard in uniform. It has been more than 30 years since Wexford Line. I never went back to Germany. The base closed long ago. The maps changed, and that stretch of land became farmland again. I saw photos once. Flat fields, quiet roads, nothing left to show what happened there. Sometimes I still think about the van driver, his face when he said not to move them together. I still don't know what "them" meant. Maybe the crates, maybe the signals, maybe us. I left the Army after my last enlistment. Civilian life came easy at first, but certain places still bring it back. Hospital corridors, hardware stores with bright white lights. The hum of ceiling fixtures always finds the same rhythm. 4, pause, 4. It feels like it's waiting for something to answer. I never told the full story to anyone until now. The official record lists it as an equipment seizure under training conditions. Nothing more. Rivera's name never appeared again. His family received a folded flag and a letter that said, "Service concluded honorably." No mention of Containment or Wexford Line or the cooler. Some nights I think it ended there. Other nights I remember the number on my order sheet 12 and how it appeared again and again. Maybe it was a count or a code or just a way of keeping track of those who saw what we weren't supposed to. If there's one thing I know, it's this: the sound never really left, it just changed form. I still hear it sometimes when a light hums or a wire vibrates under the wall. It always comes in the same pattern. 4 pulses, pause, 4 more, and when it stops, I can almost smell the bleach again. That's all there is to tell. Don't turn off your lights yet. If you like the video, hit like and watch the next amazing horror story showing on your screen.